All right. Well, hello, everyone. And I have two people here today who are going to take part in one of our courageous conversations. And it has to do with caring for someone that you really care about. In one case, familial. In the other one, well, created family. I think it's still family, but it's just sort of how you get your family. And the two folks I have with me is Micah Goodman and Stacy Heath. So I am going to let you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and the situation you're going to share out, because I think this is that space and place where it takes courage to talk about relationships, especially when they are complete to some extent. And you can't go back and revise. It's sort of, it is what it was. So Micah, let's start with you.
Great. So yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here. And I am here to talk a little bit about my experience with my father, Rabbi Hanan Sills. And he passed away about 2 years ago in February. And I got to embark on a sort of care journey and end of life adventure with my now dear friend Stacy. And it was just, I mean, we'll get into it more, but it was a surprise. It was a challenge to my core. It was a really deep, meaningful, healing, important, significant experience in my life. And at the time when I first became connected with the situation, I actually was somewhat estranged from my father. And so it was a really magical and also very difficult reconnection. Looking back through notes, and it looks like in 2016, I first came to, a few years before his eventual passing, I first came to visit and see what was going on, and began to embark on setting up services and care for him. So it was a journey. And at that time I was living in California before I had moved to live nearby. So
yeah. So he was up in Oregon, Eugene area, and you were down in California, and you guys hadn't really been that tightly connected for a while. I'm assuming sometime after teenage years, things changed and you went different directions.
You got it.
Yeah, and you set off to go do your thing. But then you came back, and now this is all subtext, but I'm betting there was a kind of moment that was happening for you and for your dad, I suspect. Was he aware of his changes, or was it really sort of, he had no idea how much he was changing, but you were like, whoa, there is something real different going on here during this little adventure?
Yeah, it was the latter.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just him that wasn't fully aware of what was going on. It was sort of his entire surroundings that weren't fully aware. My father was a big personality, very quirky, interesting, always an outside the box type.
He flew under the radar.
Yes.
Everybody thought he is getting more eccentric. He is getting a little more wow. But Rabbi, he's always been like that. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so his community, his partner, even his sort of everyone around him thought, well, he's a night owl. He just hasn't been sleeping a lot. He had started to collect papers, and they were starting all over, but he had always done that a little bit. And so it was that thing of, it was just, you had to be outside it to look in to say something's really different.
So we talk about noticing sort of the difference between normal, not normal. And not normal is when the couple of piles start to fill the entire dining table, the desktop, the floor area. Books that were on the shelves are now out, that they're being, everything's getting sorted. Everything's in a sort of, and don't touch it, don't mess with it. And to the point where you're going, this is dysfunctional. You can't do it. I mean, he's keeping trash. I mean, what is he doing? I mean, why is he keeping this stuff? And if you dare touch it, whoa, oh, how dare you? I get out. I don't need you in here. Now, I'm curious, because some of the symptoms, the nighttime wakefulness, the piling and sorting kinds of things, often one of the other things that happens is eating irregular. Eating habits were different. Was that true or not true for your dad? I'm curious about that one.
Yes. And again, it was always a little erratic. And so that's the thing that was difficult, I think, for all of us, is that his habits were always a little different. He wasn't the kind of person to be on a schedule. And so then it could get missed. That he wasn't eating as much or wasn't eating in regular intervals.
Yeah. Or so it's usually either weight gain or weight loss, or a shift in sort of looking in the fridge and going, whoa, what is going on here? Or in the cabinets, or you start to notice that this isn't just the same old thing. This extremity of it, how extreme it is. And he doesn't seem to be aware it's any different. And neither does anyone else, which is really concerning, because it means it goes on and on and on, and you get further off from the midline where he was, which, even though he was very unusual in many ways, there was a midline for him. And he's so far over to this side, it's like he's not even in the picture frame anymore. And people are still missing it and just explaining it with other things. Any issues with relationships that were shifting and nobody realized how very shifting they were, and until when you take a step back and you go, the friends that he had, the situation that he was in, boy, it is really different now that I'm looking from here to here. You could pick up on, did any of that going on, Micah?
So it was a slow process. And I do think, he was one of the most outgoing people I know, all the way up until the end, is the truth. And Stacy can speak more to this, but as the Alzheimer's disease progressed, he became more and more isolated. And so, by the time I was visiting, he wasn't leaving the house as much. There were people still coming by because he was a rabbi and had community that dropped in to see him and visit. But it's sort of over those last years, it became less and less and less, and he became more and more isolated. It was mostly him and his partner at that time, Patty, who were spending time together, and less of the stimulation he was used to. He used to be out in the community all the time. And so as that, a big talker, exactly. And so as that sort of his abilities decreased, I think he
practiced less. So it became this spiral where the less he did, the less good at it he was. And he had started to struggle with it a little bit. And rather than being able to adapt, it got harder and harder for him to do anything other than just not want to do it, because it was getting hard. And it wasn't as comfortable and fun as it used to be. There were moments, but not whole conversations that were comfortable anymore.
Absolutely. And I think, I'd love Stacy to speak to the spirit part, because the truth is that by the time she kind of magically entered his life and changed it for the better, his depression had really set in, and his spirits at a really difficult place.
Trying to find that value for being, and that joy of life, and that thrive. So now, one other quick question for you, Mike, before we switch gears is, so how did you get the responsibility, the job, the right fight even to do the thing you did for your dad, because that can be a real tough transition, particularly when you might not have been in the picture for a while and you're coming back in. How did that transition go? Because that can be a huge challenge. And I'm wondering if it was for you or that actually was not the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I took it in bite-sized bits. So I sort of was addressing the situation as it was coming. I didn't have any idea when I first embarked what it would become. And so it started with my brother and I clearing his house. So and my brother took the lead on that project of having my father stay elsewhere and clearing, all of what had been collected and making it more accessible and functional. I guess actually even before that, when my initial visit happened, I started with medical services through the VA, just what kind of benefits were available, was learning more about it, was reaching out. I had kind of a background in social services and social work. And so I kind of was trying to understand what all the resources were, where all the supports were, and then understanding what the power of attorney process looked like. So my brother and I took on joint power of attorney, and my father was just really relieved to have. So he was not resistant.
That was a blessing. So, I mean, that is a true blessing that he saw that as a positive and not something to be fought against, so that you weren't trying to rip his life out of his hands or take his life away from him. That was a huge blessing, because that can often be that really contentious. And it sounds like you and your brother worked together to come together to figure out how to do that. And which each role, what roles you guys would play, who'd be good cop, bad cop, or if you needed any of that, or who took responsibility for what.
Yeah, it really helped to make it a team effort all the way through, just to have different people having different parts of the weight, because the truth is it was a heavy lift. There were a lot of coordination pieces. And so if someone could be making those calls while someone's making those calls, it helped kind of come together. And I think the biggest piece was understanding what his benefits were and how to get more care for him, because immediately it was clear that he needed more help, and only going to be increasing.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to know about the VA. If you have served and you are often due benefits for aid and assist, and it's called aid and assist, and that's most common. I'm suspecting that was sort of some of the resources you were able to access.
And actually this one, there is aid and assist, but what he was able to access was called Homemaker's Home Health Aid. And so, I didn't know at first that it was a option, and because he didn't have a military related injury, so he didn't qualify for some of the benefits that he could have, depending on what he had served as a Navy chaplain for a short time. And his I was amazed to find that out, but it took digging. And so what I would say for anyone out there looking into resources is connect with the social worker at the VA clinic, or wherever those resources are, because it's talking to that person that you can start to learn about benefits. And we actually had a county liaison in our county too that worked with the VA, and so I was able to talk to that person too to understand what are all the options out there, because there were a lot. We ended up getting a ramp for him and all sorts of things that he needed because of.
But if you don't ask, you won't get them. And if you don't investigate, you won't know that you're due them. And that is one of the resources. I mean, those are resources that are due to people who have served. So that's really important. Now, one other thing, and we're getting to Stacy here, but one other thing, you mentioned Patty, his partner. How did this transition go for her? Because sometimes, people are in a duo relationship, and it can be a real challenge to have some folks from around say, there's something going on here and we're going to need to do something different for one of the duo. Was that a challenge, or was that not a challenge for you guys? Because it can be.
It was both. So I think, Patty took care of him and was helping make the meals happen and helping even in his sort of his own very independent situation, she was very much involved in making sure things were okay and becoming more and more caretaking for him. And so, of course, it was disruptive to her routine for all of our interventions. However, she did ultimately welcome them. So it was sort of like a mixed thing. Sometimes, you know, without meaning to, we stepped on toes. Sometimes there were those moments. However, ultimately, she was relieved to have us taking over with all the administrative pieces, with trying to coordinate care, with you know, all the financial aspect of things. She really felt strongly, you know, I want to make sure his family's in the power of attorney role and kind of making these decisions and helping him through it. And ultimately, we were talking to her a lot. So we were always trying to figure out, you know, how can we support you? How can we lessen your role? Because she had a sort of really strong work ethic of, you know, it's all on me. I have to take care of everything. So we were always trying to relieve her.
Yeah. And that can be really tricky. So it speaks to the skill of you guys pulling together and figuring out what made her more comfortable, what made her uncomfortable, what was pinching and what was supporting. And so figuring out how she still had a piece to play, but she didn't have to wear herself down and out to play it. I mean, because the desire to preserve her abilities, because she has to finish her cycle of life too. So now it's time to bring in Stacy. So Stacy, talk to us a little bit about how you got into this mix, because you know, it was this combo that led to this journey, that where it went and how it went.
Yeah, I got to Hanan when he was 82. So I'm a home care worker actually. And so the private agency that I worked for, you know, he was one of my new clients they assigned me to. And you did an interview just recently with another friend of mine, Dale Dawson, police officer. So I was his wife's caregiver. And so there was this thing where I always ended up having this overlap of two clients who ended up having Alzheimer's dementia. And so I was with her, and then I got assigned to Rabbi Hanan. So she was just finishing up her life, and I was just starting to work with him. So
cool. So you got these two different experiences, and yet very similar in some ways, and yet very different in other ways, because they were two different human beings, with two different life experiences. And so you got to experience Alzheimer's, but wow, boy, does this look different, and yet where there are similarities. So so you came into the mix. Now, how did you bring yourself into that mix with him? Well, I mean, what were some things you did with the rabbi that made it more comfortable versus less comfortable, and like calling Micah and saying, "Who is this woman, and why is she in my house, and what is she doing here? Is this you that did this?"
Yeah. I know I got assigned, and I know there was communications that went on between the agency and Patty, you know, so, you know, she knew I was coming. She didn't know who I was, though. You know, so initially meeting them, you know, like Micah said, I think she was welcoming of the help, but also still being guarded, you know, so because that was her role.
Cook fine. I do laundry. I can do this.
Yeah.
Now you could do that. But I do this.
Yes.
Until she feels comfortable. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, another woman in your house. You got to be, you know.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. And walking into things like everywhere, like Micah said, he had really like created a situation. And so there was like this one little aisle, you know, that you can walk, you know, that I could
so well. And then there are piles of stuff like don't shift too far to the side because it slides off, and then
yes.
And don't touch it. So I'm curious, how did you finesse that? And I use the word finesse because there is a finesse to this. How did you help him other than have him not be there. Because when he got back, there's this thing, you got to be a little careful that somebody hasn't come in and robbed him.
Yeah, I mean, I made sure that I focused on him and him only. I didn't look at the things around me.
Nice job.
Although it was, I'm just like, okay, I felt like that actually was part of his depression, is being surrounded by all of that stuff. Because
and
it
not
literally
being able to do much with it, not being able to figure it out, and feel like he should. He needed to do this stuff, but wow. Yeah. I'm just going to take a little nap here. I'll get back to it. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. And it was a lot for Patty too, because she talked about it. She said, it got to the point where she couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
The things just kept piling up. And so, she felt a little, not guilty, but I can't think of the word. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Overwhelmed, embarrassed, like, I don't know what to do about this because I don't want to have fights with him. I mean, and the risk is you fight about it, because you try to clean it up while he's there. So you guys made a really good choice to do this without him being present. So what kind of places and things did you have him go do during these episodes of cleaning and organizing?
We actually did it all. I had done one round while he was there trying with him, which was it's a testament to his desire to reconnect with his child that he even let it happen. But it was so difficult. It was like he was hanging on to every piece of garbage. Like, no, this Ziploc bag is so important to me. So that was a terrible, very exhausting adventure.
And so now you know why these hoarding shows are absolutely disasters if you have dementia involved. Because
it was horrible. It was horrible. Temper tantrums, all of it. But we ended up actually putting him up in an Airbnb, and we did it all at once. And we hired help and just bam, boxed stuff up. And I mean, the truth is that it worked in terms of the progression of where he was at. Yeah. If we had done it even earlier, 6 months before, would have been so devastated. Yeah. But the truth is that when he came back, he actually was just so relieved by how clear the space was, and he didn't remember all of the things
he had done.
He just knew that it looked bright and looked good.
Looked clean, yeah.
But he didn't remember all the things.
Deep cleaning, yeah. So what you did is you used the dementia symptoms as they were, which is folks can't hold on. If it's Alzheimer's, they have a really hard time holding on to the details of recent. And because you left furniture where furniture had historically been, it wasn't like you were removing furniture, you cleaned the stuff up. His brain was going, oh yeah, this is how but it's gotten cleaned. It looks great. But he had forgotten to some extent how much he had gotten all this crap out there and all this trash that was everywhere. And he did not remember the details of it, which was huge. So you actually used one of the very common symptoms to help where he was in that moment, let go of that, because when he came back, it was just like, oh, it's like it should be. It looks great, which is huge. That was a gift and a blessing. There's another blessing. The timing, because I think sometimes people want it to be when they want it, and it has to be when it's going to be doable, possible. Yeah. So that's really pretty remarkable. So tell me a little bit more about some of the other things that y'all, because this journey went on. How many years did this journey go on?
I was with him 2.5 years.
Okay. And for you, Micah, how long was it for you from when you went, 2016? Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it was probably that I first entered the picture maybe a couple of years before Stacy did, in that kind of end stage. But it was just seeing, investigating, starting to connect with services. I was still living, out of state. Things were a little bit different. It wasn't until Stacy the picture that I feel like our real, lift happened.
Hi, I'm Tifa Snow, and you just found our YouTube channel and watched one of our videos. I'm the owner and founder of Positive Approach to Care. Thanks for watching. And if you liked, if you have a comment about, or you would, please share it with people you know. Oh, and if you haven't yet done it, consider subscribing. We'll let you know when the next new video comes out. And you might want to visit our website, www.tipasnow.com, where you'll find other resources as well. See you there.